at this is at 1258 A15. Let's see if it rings a bell. Concerning the unnecessary sort of getting goods, then, both as regards what it is and why we are in need of it, enough has been said, and also concerning the necessary sort, that it is different from the other, being household management according to nature, the sort connected with sustenance, and is not without limit like the other, but has a definite principle.
Yeah, we definitely read it. We definitely read that part. In fact, he sounded a bit less neutral than he usually does. He seemed to be very against the other type of acquisition, the unlimited type of acquisition. I think I was how I was referring to it. It's the same part where he was saying people who pursue it are the ones who are more interested in living and not living well. That same chapter.
Can't remember. That sounds like something he would say here. Oh, but let's just maybe let's just remind ourselves what the limited and unlimited acquisition actually are.
Okay. The limited acquisition, the acquisition of the household, the one that's got to do with everybody's survival. I don't know if I'm expressing that correctly.
Yeah, so what's the limit of the acquisition? Why is it part of the same,
What you need.
why is it part of the same craft as household management? And then we can, by contrast, talk about what the unlimited acquisition is like and what it's about, and maybe why it's not part of the household management.
Okay.
We talk about it in terms of form and matter.
And we could have.
Maybe.
Exactly.
I'm just remembering shoes for some reason.
Yeah, shoes are a craft. It'll work with shoes. The same account roughly will work with shoes.
I think the one form of acquisition is getting shoes, like getting shoes for the people in the house, something like that. So the amount of shoes you get is determined by the people, something like that. I can't remember. But
Yes,
it's
something
basically
like that. I thought you were going to do something else. I thought you were going to talk about the shoemaker's craft.
shoemaker's craft.
Yeah. Does the shoemaker's craft include any kind of acquisition?
Yeah, it does. The material to make the shoes.
Yeah, he's got to acquire the leather and the cork and I don't know, whatever else goes into shoes. And probably also got to acquire some equipment that he can use to cut the leather and I don't know, whatever sort of thick needles you need to sew leather. So is that acquisition part of his craft? Well,
Yeah.
it's
No,
limited.
it's the croc. Oh, okay.
What were you going to say there, Thomas?
I would say, isn't that if there is a craft of the buyer and the seller, then that would be that person that would fall under that person's craft, the negotiator or this person who knows how to determine the price of things.
Well, it seems that way. But if you say that to somebody like Socrates, he's gonna point out that, well, who knows how to determine the price of horses? Some random person or the horse trainer? And then you're going to say, oh, no, of course, it's the horse trainer. And he's going to say, well, who knows how to determine the price of houses? Any random person or I don't know, the house builder or the realtor? I don't know who. And in each case, it's going to be the person who has the particular expertise that's going to be able to determine the correct price. And maybe even it's not just shoes that the shoemaker is going to be able to determine the correct price of, but because he understands the price of shoes and he knows the work and the materials that go into the making of the shoes, he's going to have some sense of what the materials and the work are worth. He's going to have some way to determine the price and the value of the materials that he's going to need to acquire to make the shoes. If he's thinking about acquisition in terms of his craft, everything about the acquisition is going to be determined, going to be limited by the craft. So he knows the value of the leather because he knows what the leather means to the shoe. Right? The guy or the girl who's managing the household, usually it's a guy for the Greeks, but it doesn't matter for the account. The person managing the household knows all the things that the household needs to do what the household does in just the way that the shoemaker knows all the things that the shoe needs to do what the shoe does. And so the acquisition of things for the household can be understood, can be limited, can be defined by the household manager, the one who knows the function of all these things. That kind of acquisition does seem to be in some way a part of or subordinate to the craft of shoemaking or household management. Up until and including, for instance, how many pairs of shoes we need for the household management. I thought you were going to go the other way with the shoemaking example, but you went I thought you were going to make an analogy. You talked about it as a part of the craft of household management. On the other hand, if all I'm doing is just acquiring leather to acquire leather, this is always going to sound a little bit more like the moneymaker, which is why it's money making as a craft is a very it stands in a very strange position for Plato and Aristotle. Sometimes they talk about it as a craft, sometimes they contrast it with craft. If I'm just a moneymaker, I just want to I want to corner the market on leather. My desire for leather is unlimited. It's got nothing to do with anything definite.
You might not even need the leather at the end of the day.
I don't need the leather. It's not even a might. If I need the leather for something, the for something is going to limit the amount of leather I need. I might need so much leather that I can't get to that limit, but there's still a limit. And just to finish, I guess to finish the review here, so we can start. We want to also, I think, keep in mind the analogy to desire here. That each one of us is the household manager of his own house, of himself. And part of that management is knowing how much of our desires need to be, knowing how to limit our desires. So we have a desire for food and for sex and for big houses, and those desires can become unlimited if I don't subordinate them to the craft of my, crafting a good life for myself. If I'm crafting a good life for myself, then I have some idea of how much food I'm going to need and how big my house needs to be, and et cetera, et cetera. If I don't have that craft, then these desires are they're just unlimited. And desire has this this dangerous character that if it's not limited, it feeds itself. You don't scratch an itch and the itch goes away. You scratch an itch and the itch comes back even more, asserts itself even more adamantly.
Seems to be giving tones of the natural slave again.
For instance, the natural slave is the one who doesn't have the idea of the limit, doesn't have this concept of the limit for himself.
It's also a lot though, because I'm thinking as you're saying it, like it seems like you have to know a lot. Like it sounds like, okay, I just need to know one thing, right? As in like the limit. But it also seems like knowing what this limit is already a lot of work. Like just being sure about the limit that, okay, this is an, I'm thinking, if you're thinking this is the right amount of food we need, and it turns out you're wrong, yeah, it just seems to be a lot of work. It seems easier said than done. Easier said than done.
Yeah, I don't think I don't see how anybody can disagree with that, really. And then at the same time, we still have the biggest problem, which is that to understand the overarching limit, we have to identify this activity that we do for its own sake. So we noticed at the beginning when we talked about the architectonic structure, didn't we? I think we did way back in chapter 1, chapter 2. And it's the same picture. We've got the lower crafts subordinated to the higher crafts. It's not just the acquiring the leather, there's the craft of working the leather. The craft of working the leather is subordinate to the craft of shoemaking, which is subordinate to the craft of whatever craft uses the shoes, which is subordinate to whatever craft you. And for the whole picture to make sense, we have to be as clear as possible about what the master craft is, the craft that isn't for something else, but is for its own sake. And because setting this limit is so complicated and important, we want to be as clear about that as possible. Everything seems to depend on it.
We have because this is the politics, we have that craft, and then there's also the question of the the craft that is concerned with the whole of the, so it's the activity that's for its own sake, and then the relation of that to the functioning of the whole. I don't know if that was clear, but there seems to be two parts to that.
Well, yeah, that's a good. If you're asking what I think you're asking, that's a really important question. Is the activity that is for its own sake, is that the functioning of the whole, or is that something over and above the functioning of the whole?
Yeah.
Did I switch? Did I
That I think
change the question on you there?
is the activity that is for its own sake the functioning of the whole, is a that it reminds me again of the beginning dilemmas in terms of thinking about what the function of the whole is, if it is the individual coming to that activity. And then I think I was wondering about that this is the political inquiry. So we're also thinking about the ruler, and then so the ruler's relationship to that activity, or to the completion of one's nature, and then how that relates to the art of ruling uh, the whole, or the state, or
Yeah, it's oh, tell me if I'm changing what you're saying here, Daniel. I'm always worried that I'm doing that. The ruler seems like he has to look in two directions at the same time. Is to look, I'm just going to call them up and down, but those are dangerous terms because everybody is going to, people get upset about prioritizing. So he has to look down to the proper functioning of the state, the all the needs of all the people being met, and everybody, and the shoemaker having the leather that he needs, and the horse rider having the saddle, and et cetera, and the way everything fits together, and everybody being fed. And then he also has to look up at the function of the state as a whole, and that the state as a whole can fill its function. He's got to be the mechanic and the driver. And are those the same action or not? It's a big question.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think the way we kind of arrived at it now, there's the sense in which I guess I was wondering about the up and down of where the statesman or the ruler is looking, and then how that relates to the activity that we were seeking, that kind of grounds, or that grounds that the architectonic nesting of function. Because there's a way in which the looking up and down, they seem similar almost. I mean, how the pieces of the whole come together. So there is a difference, but I guess I was hearing a similarity, or I was wondering about what is being looked up to, or it seems like there's three parts there, like the activity that grounds the chain of function, and then there's the statesman or the ruler that's looking to the functioning of the whole, and then because of the way we're understanding how functions are nested, the statesman has to be looking at something else. But yeah,
I think that's it.
I guess
That second and third might be the same, actually. The looking up is to the function, what it is that the state does for its own sake. And the looking down is the putting together all the nested, what you're calling the nested functions in the structure of the state.
they seem to be the same as what we seem to be saying now.
What's the they? The up and the down.
The function of the whole, and then I think this is what the in the beginning of book one, like the function of the whole, that role, and then is it a different art to rule over the parts of the whole? I don't know if I'm fabricating this beginning, but I had this sense of there being some distinction there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big question. Is it the same craft or is it a different craft? So I mean, might as well mention this in passing here, because it's kind of a big deal for scholarship, and I think just a big deal for them as well. This is the assertion in the Republic that the philosophers, for the just state to come into being, the philosophers have to rule, or the ones who are ruling have to become philosophers. The looking up is the philosopher, and the looking down is the ruler. And the claim is that they have to be done by the same person. Are they the same craft? I don't know. The claim that they have to be done by the same person seems to suggest that they're different crafts, but they have to somehow be united in this person. But at the same time, in the Republic, each person only is allowed one craft, so there must be one in some way. And then there's the whole question: does Aristotle have the same view?
From Tom, I think. Yeah,
No. I thought you were asking, do I have anything to say? No, I don't.
Okay, no, it's just the sound coming there. Okay, so yeah, if Aristotle has the same account, the same vision, that's kind of what we're inquiring into.
Yeah, and there must be something similar going on, because we're getting to the same question here, and we have the same architectonic nested structure of nested functions, and we have the same question of what the highest function is. Like, what's the function that is limiting all the ones underneath it, in the way that we're finding out here that household management limits acquisition.
Yeah. No, I guess because it's we in this kind of review mode, the Aristotle just kind of he was like, what's the basic component or thing, and then that's the progression that leads us to this considering the household as the, apart from the individual, the basic unit that makes up the state, and he's just kind of following in a natural seeming way the differences, and then we add this the art now of the household in a broad brushstroke.
Yeah, and we're able to look at the way that the function of the whole relates to the nested structure without yet having to confront directly on its own the question of what the function of the whole is. Because the household is within a bigger structure.
Yeah, yeah. That that will contribute to this. I think I'm misusing it again, but this all the more so kind of the progression of the force of the argument. I don't know if maybe I think I'm using it in the right sense. Should we do we seem to be at part 10 then? Chapter 10.
I think so.
I can read, but I'm not really preferring this translation. But I can give it a go.
All right. Yeah, give it a go.
Okay, so part 10 or chapter 10. And we have found the answer to our original question, whether the art of getting wealth is the business of the manager of a household and of the statesman, or not their business, vis-a-vis that wealth is presupposed by them. For as political science does not make men, but takes them from nature and uses them, so too nature provides them with earth or sea or the like as a source of food. At this stage begins the duty of the manager of a household, who has to order the things which nature supplies. He may be compared to the weaver who has not to make but to use wool, and to know too what sort of wool is good and serviceable, or bad and unserviceable. Were this otherwise, it would be difficult to see why the art of getting wealth is a part of the management of a household, and the art of medicine not. For surely the members of a household must have health, just as they must have life or any other necessary. The answer is that, as from one point of view the master of the house and the ruler of the state have to consider about health, from another point of view, not they but the physician. So in one way the art of household management, in another way the subordinate art, has to consider about wealth. But strictly speaking, as I have already said, the means of life must be provided beforehand by nature. For the business of nature is to furnish food to that which is born, and the food of the offspring is always what remains over of that from which it is produced. Wherefore the art of getting wealth out of fruits of an animals is always natural. There are two sorts of wealth getting, as I've said. One is a part of household management, the other is retail trade. The former necessary and honorable, while that which consists in exchange is justly censored, for it is unnatural, and a mode by which men gain from one another. The most hated sort, and with the greatest reason, is usury, which makes a gain out of money itself, and not from the natural object of it. For money was intended to be used in exchange, but not to increase at interest. And this term interest, which means the birth of money from money, is applied to the breeding of money because the offspring resembles the parent. Wherefore, of and modes of getting wealth, this is the most unnatural. It was a very interesting transition from the natural. I didn't quite catch what he was saying about the generating food and then the surplus of the generated food that feeds the next. But then there seemed to be an analog with the money from from that natural production into the unnatural money, but there's a lot. There's a lot in that passage.
What was he saying? What was he saying about health, where health is the responsibility of the physician, but it's also is he saying it's also the responsibility of the house manager somehow?
The house manager
So
is responsible for the people in his house being healthy. But he's not a physician.
so his responsibility is not, even though the responsibility is about the same thing, it's not in the same way.
Yeah. The household manager doesn't actually know how to make somebody healthy. He just knows that this person should be healthy. It doesn't, in this case, it doesn't sound like a particularly difficult thing to know, but just think about a more obvious craft. So the horse rider, I'm stealing this example from book 1 of the Nicomachean Ethics. The horse rider has to know how to, as a horse rider, knows how to ride a horse, probably in battle. And because he knows how to ride a horse, he knows all these things that he needs to ride a horse. You need a saddle and you need a rein. You need that little bit thing that goes in the horse's mouth and pulls its teeth into whatever it does. He doesn't know how to make those things. But in a way, he has a craft that rules the one who makes those things. Doesn't know how to make a saddle, but he knows how to tell the saddle maker. In fact, he is the only one who really knows how to tell the saddle maker how to make the saddle. Because he knows what the saddle is supposed to do. So I think exactly like you said,
So in
Sipo,
terms of
they know the saddle in different ways.
mm,
The saddle maker knows how to make the saddle, and the horse rider knows the function of the saddle and how to use the saddle.
So as an analog for the household manager and the physician, is it
mm,
well it, is it an analog or is it a different instance? Or I mean, what does the household manager, do they rule the physician? Or I don't know if that's the right way to frame it, but they care for the members of the household, they care for their health. They must know in some way what health and unhealth is, but they don't have the craft of making healthy or unhealthy. So then they know when a physician is appropriate.
Yeah,
I,
yeah, it's an analog. Your two options were, is it an analog or a different instance? And it's both. It's an analogous instance.
yeah,
It works the same. It works the same way as the horse rider and the saddle maker.
yeah, I think that's what I was trying to clarify for myself, if it was working in the same way. Or
Yeah.
um and then what's the part about the food, about and nature and um and just, so to
you're
nature,
still there. Oh, cool. Sorry.
was I coming through there?
Um,
I think
you
there
cut
might
out
have been a
in the
problem
middle
on
here.
my part. when you talk about the offspring being fed off, what something about leftovers of something. Can't remember exactly what you were saying.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. That nature's to furnish food for that which is born. But then I was reading quite a bit before that in terms of how nature services men for political science. And then nature also provides them with earth or sea or the like as a source of food. But now I have no idea what I'm asking.
We've got this structure, and we've been puzzling over the most important puzzle, I think, which is what happens at the top of the structure. What's the function that isn't subordinate to any other function? Then there's also a bottom of the structure. So the horse rider needs somebody to make a saddle to give him the material for riding the horse, and the saddle maker needs somebody to treat the leather that he can use to make the saddle. And the person who treats the leather needs somebody to take the leather off the cow or wherever they get the leather from. At some point at the bottom, it's just given to you. It's just nature provides the material.
Mm.
So this is the bottom of the structure.
Mm. Yeah.
Mm.
And then there's the moneymaker who just manipulates the structure for his own ends and doesn't actually do anything.
Your interest,
What a hero.
usury.
Right.
Just an unlimited desire for money that doesn't have any order to it and isn't subordinated to any sort of form. Aristotle doesn't seem so keen on that person.
He's not so keen on capitalism then.
The usurer, the one who uses money to make money.
It's definitely not a fan
It's
of modern economics then, with its idea that investment is very, very important to a polity. We need to have
What
investment.
are you investing for?
Hmm?
Wouldn't it depend on what you're investing for, though?
Presumably,
There is a
but
point if you're just investing, you just have money.
modern, as far as I understand modern economics, one of the biggest imperatives is to encourage both internal and external investment so that the economy can keep growing. So you can keep producing more, so you can keep having more money, so you can keep in perpetuity.
There does
To
seem, I'm speaking totally out of turn here because I don't know anything about this stuff. But there does seem to be an unlimitedness built into the very nature of capitalism. Like part of what we're doing as capitalists is reliant on the possibility of unlimited growth, which does sound or does stand in complete contrast to Aristotle, where things should be fundamentally limited and determined by the form of the whole. I think that's what Thomas is getting at here, what Thomas is talking about.
That is basically, yes.
So interesting that how this relates to some of the more personal or emotional struggles that we sometimes talk about before we start here, about self-worth in our society being so connected to just making money. It's completely different type of life, living in a society where unlimited money making is considered good. Aristotle's claim here seems to be that is unhealthy. That is an unhealthy society to force people to live in. It is not conducive to real human thriving.
Mm. Is it
Tough luck.
the
Tough luck for us.
another like the because there's making money, and then if the different structures or wholes or corporations that are functioning within the states and then across the states, and that's probably why it's a bit difficult to speak about, because we're not sure what the main body of belonging is, if it's capital or if it's the nation state or if um it's not sure what the whole is. But if the whole that one is a part of, or that is offering employment, and employment is also something that you uh, confers dignity and um, being useful to one's context, then it's just another element of that self-worth point. But if and then I guess I'm wondering if the employment itself in a structure that is aimed towards something unlimited, so like a capital structure, if that affects the function or the self-worth or um, of someone who's lower down the chain as a functioning employee in that body. Like, does it matter where the whole is aimed or orientated towards from the perspective of a part, or a part's ability to complete themselves? Or is that question clear? It struggling through its articulation definitely helped it get a bit clearer in my mind.
Are you asking if it's possible to be a structured whole person and live a good life in a capitalist society?
Something like that, yeah.
So I think maybe one way to think of it is like this. This is roughly the way I think of it. You can take it or leave it. Aristotle's idea, or his ideal here, is that the society you live in helps you to limit yourself and helps you to be limited, right? Either you belong as the ruler, in which case your role is establishing the overarching structure that's going to allow people to limit themselves, and you're going to be limited by that role, or you're going to be in a lower role, and you're going to be in some sense, we're all somewhere between the ruler and the slave. And the ideal society is going to speak to both parts of ourselves and allow us to live in context and to flourish in context. And the society is going to actually help us to do that. It's going to restrain the slavish part of our nature, and it's going to encourage the ruling part of our nature. If you don't live in a society that does that for you, you got to do it on your own. And the worst case scenario is you live in a society that actively makes that impossible or illegal. We don't seem to have that problem. We just live in a society that encourages you to be unlimited and unrestrained. It doesn't encourage restraint. So we have to do it for ourselves. So it puts a big burden on us.
The irony of it is that it's sold to us as self-ruling, and nobody's gonna rule you. You can just rule yourself. And then
It is.
saying,
It's a
yeah, then
callous
the irony.
of unloving.
Come again?
It's a callous form of unloving.
Like it's sold to us almost as if it's the exact opposite, as if you're just left to rule yourself, and then you're just left on like with all these unlimited. It's strange. I actually don't even know how to express it.
I just is one thing. It's a bit of a backwards about the lending of money and interest and making money from money. I mean, I guess I don't know. Maybe Larry, you're gonna correct me on this. I do think that there must be some role in a society for like a kind of innovation, or like, I mean, I think of investment as something like, if there isn't a windmill on a piece of land, and we don't have the resources right now directly to build it, but it would be in everyone's interest if it was built, so that the price of milling grain would go down a little bit, so more people could afford bread and things like that. I guess I am thinking in very un-Aristotelian, very utilitarian terms, but I do think that is probably a good thing in some way. And if investment helps us get there, I do think that that's a good thing.
There's nothing wrong with building the factories that you need to survive.
Okay.
The point is that you have to think in terms of what you need to survive and to flourish, not in terms of how to make money.
Okay, but I think he is. It seems, I don't know. Maybe I'm misunderstanding where he says that to make money off money is the most unnatural of all arts.
It's the most unnatural. That's right.
And one of the what I'm not saying that we can't have a windmill without finance and investment. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that those things help if they're moderate. I guess I'm arguing a no true Scotsman in a way. If they're moderated, they would be good. But those things help facilitate the creation of those things. For a good example, I guess the Soviet Union isn't a good case for a case of Aristotelianism, but it didn't have investment in capital, so it made horrible investments, and its economy went down. I guess I just sometimes we need people to have large stacks of money lying around, being prepared to hand them out.
What we need and what should be needed are not necessarily the same thing. Right. You are talking about the way things work in a modern context. And you're right, in a modern context, if you want to get stuff done, you got to find investors. That's not the only conceivable way that a society could be structured. The problem
True.
with structuring a society in that way is that you are creating an incentive for people to understand success in terms of being the person who can dish out the money. And the question is that a healthy way for people to be?
Sure. No, it's not.
Not according to Aristotle. Not only is that not healthy for the people who are not the people dishing out the money, because they think that they're supposed to be something other than what they are, it's unhealthy for the people who are dishing out the money because they don't have any, their desires and their intentions in the world are completely unlimited. They can never be satisfied. Elon Musk will never be happy. It's not possible for him that he could be happy. There is no point at which his happiness comes to be. There's no limit. He's just going to keep getting weirder and weirder. Or he's going to have to figure out that the meaning of his life is somewhere completely other than where he's been looking for it.
The time is back in South Africa.
What's that, Daniel?
You should tell him it's back in South Africa. What he's looking for.
Is happy.
I have a distinct impression he would not be given a welcoming committee.
Maybe the oppressed farmers will welcome him. The oppressed white farmers will welcome him with open arms.
Yeah. Politics.
These are the people that are running the world, the money makers. More and more all the time. I mean, the most powerful man in the most powerful country in the world is just some guy who was born rich and spent his whole life doing exactly what Aristotle is talking about. Just money, making money from money. You should next time you feel inadequate you feel out of tune with society, just take a step back and compliment and give yourself a pat on the back and say, well, yeah, well done. I shouldn't feel well adjusted. This is terrible. It's a terrible economy to be well adjusted to.
Yeah.
This is a far more depressing, far more depressing
More
session.
depressing than marking, Sipo.
Far more depressing. I don't remember the politics being this depressing in the past. This week it's just, yeah, it's just killing me. You guys are killing me this week. What's going on?
I was competent.
Usually put more life. Usually put more life in. You guys just
Sometimes when you read or listen to something sad,
vampires.
it is your soul.
There's this there's I think it's in the Meno that we were reading or the Protagoras, one of those two, where it's just like by the wayside, where Socrates he's laughing off because in one of those dialogues he's in a different city I think it's the Protagoras. He's not in Athens, the person that he's speaking with. And just like the by the wayside thing is, he says to whoever he's speaking to that like this would never happen in Athens because my fellow citizen wouldn't presume to know whatever virtue they were speaking about. They wouldn't presume to know what it is. So like the whole
Meno. It's the
Meno.
Meno. The Meno.
I think I might be mean.
It's the Meno. It takes place in Athens, but he's talking to somebody visiting. I think Meno is the person. Is Meno the person?
Meno is visiting. I think he's from Larissa.
Meno is visiting, and one of the people he's talking to is this guy Anytus, who is one of his accusers in the Apology. So the whole thing is sort of has that as the backdrop. He's saying nobody in Athens would claim to know what virtue is.
They've had that beaten out of by Socrates.
They don't know. The damn thing.
But as it struck out to me reading it when we did about a year ago almost, in the sense of I guess the reality of Socrates' rulership in his context, and that it might have been functioning in a way that is different to, well, the way that political power might function in another sense. So that they did or were capable, that they did take him to court. I was motivated by trying to comfort these people, but the sense is that
I made it worse.
How?
I just reminded me about Socrates' death. You just made this worse. You just keep finishing me off.
Hey, finish him.
Mortal Kombat shit. Anyway.
There's also
maybe I'm just not fully recovered. Maybe that's why I feel off. Maybe I'm just not fully recovered, and I'm just like, yeah.
Fully recovered from what?
I don't know. I got sick last week. I don't know where the hell I caught whatever the hell I caught. Now everybody in the house caught it because of me. We went to a tournament last Saturday, and I'm thinking, because two of us here in the house were at the tournament, and then we both ended up sick that week. So I'm thinking we probably caught this at the tournament. So yeah.
You were gonna say something, Larry?
Yeah, but maybe we should try read a little bit more before we stop here. How much we got? 30 minutes. Should we try read another couple of passages?
Another 2 lines, perhaps.
We had a
Go
chapter
for it. Come again?
chapter 11 or part 11.
Chapter 11, yeah. You want to take it away, Thomas?
Okay. Having already sufficiently considered the general principles of this subject, let us now go into the practical part thereof. One is a liberal employment for the mind, the other necessary. These things are useful in the management of one's affairs. To be skillful in the nature of cattle, which are most profitable, where and how, as for instance, what advantage will arise from the keeping of horses or oxen or sheep, or in any other livestock. It is also necessary to be acquainted with the comparative value of these things, and which of them in particular places are worth most. For some are better in one place and some in another. Agriculture should also be understood, and the management of arable land and orchards, and also the care of bees and fish and birds, and from whence any profit may arise. These are the first and most proper parts of domestic management. Should I carry on? With respect to gaining money by exchange, the principal method of doing this is by merchandise, which is carried on in three different ways. Either by selling the commodity for sale by sea or land, or else selling it in a place where it grows, and these differ from each other. I've lost my place now. And these differ from each other in that one is more profitable and the other safer. The second method is by usury. The third, by receiving wages for work done. And this is either by being employed in some mean art, or else in mere bodily labor. There is a third species of improving fortune. That is, of something between this and the first. For it partly depends on nature, partly on exchange. The subject of which is the things that are immediately put from the earth, or their produce, which, though they bear no fruit, are useful, such as selling of timber and the whole art of metallurgy, which includes many different species, for there are various sorts of things dug out of the earth. We have not mentioned in general, but to enter into... Sorry. Should I continue?
Sorry, what is usury?
Usually,
What is usury?
it's actually got, it seems, he seems to translate, this translator puts it as any form of taking of interest, but it traditionally it means extortionate interest. To put interest above a certain threshold.
Money lending.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Do you want? Okay. Are we gonna? Do we want to comment on what he said, or do you want me to continue? I'm asking. It's
Look, I'm
democratic.
guessing Aristotle. I'm guessing Aristotle was not broke, because it sounds like he's got all the schemes, like all this money for making money. Seems like he's got this money thing figured out.
He solved the money problem.
Like, why didn't you lead with this text, Larry? Like all those years out here reading all these unnecessary texts, and all this time there was a guy telling us how to make money. All this time.
Is he?
Are you guys there?
Yeah.
Is it not? Clearly, I gotta either export something or sell something where it grows.
Or engage in usury.
Yeah, I don't have money to borrow people, so that was not an option for me. That's quite
Don't
fascinating
worry,
stuff.
the banks don't have any money either. They just borrow it from the government. They borrow the money they lend to us at a lower interest rate.
Is Larry still there? Seems frozen.
He looks like he's frozen.
Isn't, yeah.
It's quite a picture, huh?
Hmm. I think 8 degrees finally got to. Mm.
You guys hear me?
People, yeah.
Are you guys still there?
I'm still there, yeah. There's
I
Yeah,
like
can
yeah.
see Daniel. Oh, there you
I missed all of that, Sipa. I heard the beginning,
you
something
want to
about
continue
how,
reading, Thomas?
sorry?
Are you finished? You want to continue reading? Like,
Well,
I'm curious where this
I
is
was leaving it
going.
to a Democratic vote. Let me finish. Oh wait, hold on.
so we got the three types of making money here.
Yeah.
Three ways of making money. Selling
Ah,
stuff,
there.
usury, and selling your labor.
All right.
All right, go on, Thomas. Let's see
Uh,
what we get here.
okay. These we have now mentioned in general, but to enter into particulars concerning each of them, though it might be useful to the artist, would be tiresome to dwell on. Now all of these works of art, those are the most excellent wherein the chance has the least to do, and those are the meanest which deprave the body, those the most servile in which bodily strength alone is chiefly wanted, those the most illiberal which require the least skill. But as there are books written on these subjects by some persons, such as Chares the Panian, Apollodorus the Limnian, on husbandry and planting, and by others on other matters, let those who have occasion to consult them thereon. Besides, every person should collect together whatsoever he hears occasionally mentioned, by means of which many of those who aimed at making a fortune have succeeded in their intentions. For all of these are useful to those who make the point of getting money, as in the contrivance of Thales the Milesian, which was certainly a gainful one, but as it was hit upon, it was his attributed to his wisdom through the method he used, though the method he used was a general one and would universally succeed. When they reviled him for his poverty, as if the study of philosophy was useless. For they say that he, perceiving by his skill in astrology that there would be great plenty of olives that year, while it was yet winter, having got a little money, he gave he gave earnest for all the oil works that were in Miletus and Chios, which he hired at a low price, there being no one to bid against him. But when the season came for making oil, many persons wanting them, he all at once let let them upon terms that he pleased, raising a large sum of money. By that means, convinced them that it is easy for philosophers to be rich if they chose. But that was not what they aimed at. In this manner, Thales is said to have shown his wisdom. It is indeed, it indeed is, as we have said, generally gainful for a person to contrive to make a monopoly of anything. For which reason, some cities also make this their method when they want money and monopolize their commodities. There was a certain person in Sicily who laid out a sum of money which was deposited in his hand in buying up all the iron from the iron merchants, so that when the dealers came from the markets to purchase, there was no one who had any to sell but himself, though he put no great advance upon it. Yet by laying up 50 talents, he made 100. When Dionysius heard this, he permitted him to take his money with him, but forbid him to continue any longer in Sicily, as being one who had contrived means of getting money inconsistent with his affairs. This man's view and Thales' was exactly the same. Both of them contrived to procure a monopoly for themselves. It is useful also for politicians to understand these things. For many states have want of to raise money, and by such means as well as private families, nay, more so, for which reason some persons who are employed in the management of public affairs confine themselves to this province only. Oh my. So we should all be rich.
How did you get that out of this chapter?
It says it here. They reviled him for his poverty as
Is
he
this the
the
same?
study of philosophy was useless. For they would say he's perceiving by his skill in astrology jihad at a low price.
Is this the same Thales in the metaphysics?
Yes, that is the first Thales. Raising lots and convinced them that it was easy for philosophers to be rich if they chose it, but that this was not what they aimed at.
Sounds like the opposite of we should all be rich. We shouldn't aim at wealth.
That's true. But all things being equal, it's nicer to cry in the Mercedes than on a bicycle.
That's what the weather's like.
Yeah. Jesus, Thomas.
That's not my joke, by the way.
Mercedes.
Yeah.
Make it like at least a BMW.
Don't they basically the same? Be patriotic and say something like a Bentley.
Same Thales. Oh, well, what passage in the metaphysics were you thinking of, Sipa?
Isn't he one of the folks who started off with like one of the original philosophers, like that I mentioned, except one of the guys who tried to make whatever thing they're looking for, a physical thing. I can't remember exactly how they put it.
Yeah,
he was Mr. Water.
Right where everybody's like, yeah, right there. Everybody's like, everything's fire, everything's water, everything's this.
he was, what did you say, Mr. Water? He was Mr. Water, that's right. Everything is water.
Is he the water guy?
He was the first one. He's considered to be the first philosopher. Some people date the beginning of Western philosophy with his prediction of an eclipse.
It's the okay, it's that same one. Yeah, all right. Seems to have done a lot.
Yeah, he seemed to be a good astronomer. That's the point here. He understood the rationality of the patterns in the heavens, and he didn't understand them for any reason other than just to understand and to see that the world is a rational place. Nature is rational. But he also, I think this is all the same story. The full story is that he was looking up at the heavens, and while he was walking, and he didn't see and he fell into a hole or something. And there were a milkmaid made fun of him. And so he said, I can make, she made fun of him with something like, you're thinking about the heavens and you're not thinking about actually living on Earth. And to prove to her that he could, if he wanted to, he used his knowledge of the heavens to predict this olive boom and bought up all the olive presses. That's the story we're getting here. Cornered the market on olive presses and made a bunch of money. But just to prove a point.
That's the important point.
Not for money. Not to make money, just to prove a point.
Prove a point to a beautiful young girl. That's the important part here. It's all about the milkmaid.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's to prove a point. He
Uh,
wasn't interested in money making. He was interested in showing that he could if he wanted to. That his knowledge is somehow
He's not wasting time.
it's more fundamental and more important. Yeah.
All right. 1 second. I want to respond to these people here. So when are we investing into olives, gents?
Investing in what? In olive presses.
Yeah,
Probably be more likely to make money out of alcohol or gambling.
Interesting. There's a footnote
I
here
can't.
in this edition. There's a footnote at the end of the chapter Thomas just read. Aristotle may be thinking particularly of the contemporary Athenian politician Eubulus. Some have suspected this chapter of being a later interpolation. The chief difficulty is that it seems to undercut the critique of money making in the preceding chapters. So everybody likes to excise passages from Aristotle that don't fit their interpretation. This is one that it's hard to fit into an interpretation. But he says at the beginning, this is some practical advice. Sometimes you need to, for the sake of your household, you need to make some money. Here's a way to do it. But like Thales, we have to recognize that it should never be the main focus. You have to do it if you have to do it. But you will be prepared to do it if you focus on important things. Seems to be you'll both be prepared to do it and prepared not to take it too seriously.
And is the way the creation of a monopoly?
Yeah, it's one that I guess that would probably be one way. It's not necessarily the only way, but that's going to work. If you know there's going to be a big olive boom and people are going to need olive presses, corner the market on olive presses, and you'll do well.
Isn't that what stock marketeers do all the time? The smart ones.
Basically, yeah. I'm not sure they do it by gazing at the heavens and predicting the seasons, or maybe predicting the seasons in some way.
That's the primary method. Astrology, astronomy.
I think isn't that astrology probably a bit of a mistranslation? I would be. I don't know.
Does it say astrology?
In my translation, it says astrology. Yeah.
Where is that?
Mine does not have. Wait. Okay, so it's 1259A. It's not giving me the line numbers, but it's where it's talking about Thales. Thales was attributed him to his wisdom, though through the method he used was a general one. He would and would universally succeed, when they reviled him for his poverty as if the study of philosophy was useless, where they say that he, perceiving by his skill in astrology, there would be plenty of olives that year. There's also
mine says astronomy, actually. So those are both Greek words, right? Astronomy and astrology. And they mean, in Greek, what they mean and the way we take them are almost exactly opposite. Astrology is logos of the stars. Logos is like biology and well, what are the other ologies? Epistemology, all the ologies. So it's an account. Nomos means something like law or custom. So astronomy would be like what we customarily take to be what the stars, it's more like what we customarily take the stars to represent, or it could be. So maybe one translator decided to go with the literal translation. Maybe it was astrologos in the Greek. I can check here, but it doesn't really matter. And the other person decided to translate the sense of it, and I think the sense of it is probably astronomy. I mean, this is a guy who was predicting eclipses, not a guy who was giving people necklaces that match their birth sign.
dream catcher types.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Catch the what?
Dream catcher people.
What?
Also, I mean, it is worth mentioning that at that time, the two were probably much closer than we think of them as being. So when Thales was trying to understand the stars, he was trying to predict things. But the prediction, it wasn't anything vague. It was science. He was predicting, there will be a good olive harvest because there are certain heavenly confluences happening in certain ways, and that's going to have an effect on the weather, and that's going to have an effect on the olive groves. So is that astrology or astronomy in our sense of the word? Well, we don't make predictions like that anymore. That doesn't mean that there isn't some sense. I mean, we know that, for instance, the moon affects the tides. You can see that pretty easily if you live in Cape Town. It is or the point of view that Thales represents is the point of view that sees the connection as even more intelligible than that. It's not just the moon affects the tides, it's all the spheres, the heavenly spheres, all the stars, all the planets in particular, the ones that change their positions, have noticeable effects on the world.
Yeah, wouldn't we think of it almost in the we would think of it like that those things just correlate with each other.
Well,
there's just a sort of happening of an alignment, a conjunction, if you will.
Yeah, we think of it in terms of these very sort of static and formalized laws. If Venus is in retrograde, that means X, Y, and Z. And it's become a sort of a belief. And it's become standardized, and it is no longer actually connected to actually looking at the heavens and seeing things in relation to each other, and any sort of way that could actually relate to the effect that the gravitational forces or whatever it is might have. We just have our astrologers just look at books and read what certain things represent and then act on the representation. But there's no sense of cause. For Thales, it was about actual physical causes. And that's pretty different.
How much time do
That's
you
it.
spend looking at
Yeah.
Yeah, who does that anymore apart from
must be a long time. Well,
Spend time
sure,
studying.
somebody still does it.
Who does
art school stuff. Sorry?
who does what?
Seriously studies the stars. I mean, I don't. And I don't know anyone who really goes out of their way to kind of dwell with stars, so to speak.
Yeah, probably.
Not that many of us can even see them nowadays, because most of
That's
us live in cities.
Dirty city. Cities with dirty skies.
But
Did you hear they're planning on putting projecting advertising onto the night sky in New York? It was apparently a plan afoot to do that. Sorry, Sipo, just adding one more straw to the camel's back.
I don't know how they may put me. I live in small towns. They always stars when I look up. And I never had a day where sky was so dirty I couldn't see shit. Nah, not a day in my life. Not a day in my life. They always there.
Might have been bullshit.
Sounds like a problem for you, Oaks. Cape Town, Oaks.
It's not that bad compared to most American cities. At least got the ocean right next to you, and there's generally not too many streetlights on the ocean. So I'm just looking at my calendar. Are we gonna meet next week, guys?
What's the date next week?
The 27th.
27th, yeah.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try and go home sometime this week or after. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
Go home to
everybody happy for Beaufort.
for both. Okay. Is that your dad?
Yeah, I need to book a driving test. There's nowhere to drive here. I mean, there's no traffic department, so I can't do my driving test here. And I don't want to go do it in Port Alfred. I'll just go do it
Are you
in
not in
Footnote.
Grahamstown, Sipo?
Come again?
Are you not in Grahamstown? I assume.
I am in Grahamstown. You haven't been in Grahamstown in a while. Ne? There's no traffic department in Grahamstown, but
What?
yep.
My God.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, it's been shut down for a while.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Do you know something I don't, Larry? Because if you know something, now's the time to tell me.
Well,
It's
I know.
right. There's one by the cathedral. Is it St. George's Cathedral? Or was it just?
How long ago did it get shut down?
It's been closed. Ever since I got back, they've been telling me it's been closed. It hasn't opened.
Okay.
Are you sure it's been closed
kept
permanently?
asking
Or is it
people,
not
where
just
did
one of
they get-
the computer's broken type stories?
Nah, apparently the building was what's the word? What's the word? When you can't work in a building, when the building's too bad for
Condemned.
human beings to work. Yeah, so they were like, nah, they gotta fix They gotta fix that building, and apparently it hasn't been fixed up until now. So I kept asking people, where the hell do you go to renew your licenses and shit? And it turns out people keep going to Port Alfred.
I met my ex-girlfriend in that traffic department. No wonder it was condemned.
So the building that the traffic department was in got condemned, and instead of fixing the building, they just closed the traffic department.
I know,
There
Larry. I
Solves the
know.
problem.
Cost me a
Grant.
lot of money. I'm too broke to be paying this much money. I really thought coming back to Grahamstown would solve so many of my problems. I don't know why I thought that. I really don't know why I thought that.
Dear my friend, I'm sorry about that.
Ah, it's fine. I need to go. I need to go back to Fort Beaufort to get some of my stuff anyway. I'm gonna hire a truck and just go do this damn thing and then get it out of my way.
Hmm.
How's
Yeah,
Yule doing?
she caught my flu, but she's
Oh
far
no.
better now than she was a couple of days ago. Yeah, it was bad. Like 2 days ago, it was really bad. But yeah, far better now. Recovered. Like that was a bad flu. It was a bad flu. The type that makes your body shiver and gives you aches, pain. Like I haven't had that. That was the first time I've had a flu like that. So
Was
yeah,
it COVID maybe? Did you
probably.
test yourself for COVID?
Yeah. No, I didn't. No, I don't go spend money. Uh, the thing, I just endured it, and then I caught up. And, the cheapest solution, the one I took. Yeah. And then apparently, like people at the gym kept telling me they were getting headaches, and then they were starting coughing. And I was like, bro, that's how it started with me. So whatever the hell it was, it caught a couple of people. It caught a couple of people. I was suspecting it was COVID, to be honest. But yeah,
Well, I'm
sometimes you
glad you're
forget. Oh God. Mm. Don't worry, Larry. You're not gonna get me that easy.
all right, guys. Well, I gotta go here.
Cheers,
Hey,
doctor.
Cheers, guys. I'll see all of you next week.
Bye bye. Bye bye, guys.
So,
yeah,
I must
cheers,
go.
guys.
Ciao.
Go well.